Hi, this is Daniel John Stein. Thanks for using my AutoCAD book. We're going to begin this video series by looking at the user interface. When you first start AutoCAD, you are presented with the New tab. This allows you to select from recent documents, which we see down the middle. On the left, we have the ability to start a new drawing or open files. Before we click on Start a New Drawing, we should make sure we're using a template that has the settings in it that we want. So we can click on this bar across the bottom that says Templates, and for this book we're only going to be using this Architectural Imperial template file under Sheet Sets. So once we click on that, it opens a copy of that template file. It starts us in a new drawing called drawing1.dwg. We can see that at the top on the title bar. It should be pointed out that in the future, when you click on the Start Drawing icon on the New Drawing tab, it will always use the Architectural Imperial template until that is changed again by selecting a different template from the list. So now we're going to take a quick look at the user interface for AutoCAD. Starting across the top, we've already made reference to the title bar. That lists the program that you're in and the name of the file. So because we just started a new file from a template, we are temporarily in a drawing called Drawing1. Soon as we save, AutoCAD will prompt us to give this file a proper name. In the upper left of the title bar, we have what is called the Quick Access toolbar. This allows us to have handy access to several tools that are used often, regardless of what the state is of the ribbon below it. To the far left, we have the application menu. That's the little red abstract A that we see. When we click on that, we have several file-related options to create a new file, open, save. We can export, publish, print. So print is something we're going to want to take note of. This is how we print a drawing. There are other options here, such as the Options button, which allows you to make several changes to the way AutoCAD performs and how it looks on the screen. I recommend that you don't make changes to that right now, so things match closely what you see in the book. There's also a couple little toggles here to see the recent documents that you have been in, and then also your currently open documents. So I'm going to hit Escape to close the application menu. On the far right hand side of the title bar, we have the Help and Exchange Center. So we can type in a help key phrase or keyword here, and it'll open up the help system showing results for that search. We also have the ability to sign in to Autodesk 360, which you'll learn more about later. And then to the far right, we have the ability to minimize, tile down, or maximize, or close the application. So this is fairly common for any Windows program. Below the title bar, we have the ribbon. So the ribbon is composed of several tabs. Each of these tabs have groupings of commands. For example, we have the Draw panel, the Modify panel, Annotation panel. Within each of these panels are tools that allow us to either create or modify content in the AutoCAD file. If we look at the different tools, we can see this is the Line tool, one of the most fundamental tools in AutoCAD. If we hover over it for just a second, we see a quick tooltip telling us what the command is. If we hover over it for a little bit longer, we see what is called an extended tooltip. It shows us more information about how to use the tool. And if we were to press F1 right now, AutoCAD would open the help system showing us information about the Line tool. Some tools are actually split buttons. When you hover over it, you see two distinct areas. Clicking the bottom area presents several closely related options. If we ever click the top area, it always starts this first item in the list as a default. We'll notice that some panels have a little down arrow next to them. This opens up what's called an extended panel area. These are tools that are less often used according to Autodesk's research. If we click one of those items, the menu automatically goes away, or if we just move our cursor away from it, it also goes away. You'll also notice in some panel areas, like the Properties panel here, in the lower right there's a down arrow. When that's clicked on, that opens up a panel or a palette or a dialog box. This can be closed now, but I just wanted to show you how that works. The last thing I want to point out about the ribbon is these two last little icons after the tabs. Typically you don't need to use these. These are meant to increase the drawing area on a smaller monitor, but you'll want to have your ribbon match the images that you see in the book. But in case you accidentally click on one of these or even double click on a tab, you'll notice that the state of the ribbon changes. And so you can minimize it all the way down to just the tabs showing, and then when you click on one of the tabs, all the tools present themselves. When you click on one of those tools, the ribbon goes away, or when you move your cursor off of it, it also disappears. So if we click this again, we can see it rolls back to the beginning. So each time you click it, it toggles between one of 4 different states. Just below the ribbon, we have the drawing tabs. This shows us a tab for each drawing that we're in. Similar to your internet browsers, you can have a tab for each website that you're on. Here you have the ability to click the X to close the drawing. There's also a convenient plus icon here to start a new drawing. If we right click on the drawing tab, we'll see several options such as save, save as. We can close all the drawings at once, or we could close all the drawings except for the current tab that we're on. We can't hit escape to close this, we just click on the tab again to make that menu go away. When we're hovering over a tab, we'll see a preview for the model space and any layout spaces that you might have in this drawing. You haven't learned about this yet, but just real quickly, model space is typically where you do all your drawing in, and the layout space is where you do your printing from. So this has a title sheet, and it can have views set up that look into model space so that you can compose your real world size floor plans on a small 22 by 34 inch sheet, for example. So I'll just move my cursor off of that to make that go away. Below the drawing tab area, we have the actual drawing area. This is where we'll do most of our work. In the very lower left, we also see a manual toggle between the model space and any layout tabs. So to the right of model space, you could have one or more layout tabs. Additional layout tabs might be different size drawing sheets, or it might be they might be looking at different areas within model space. So you could have several drawing sheets within this one AutoCAD drawing. To the right and in the middle of the screen, we have what's called the command window. So in this window, we could start typing a command rather than picking it from the ribbon. As we type a word, we see some other commands show up that have that word in it. When we hover over one of these commands, we could click on the little question mark to search help for what that command does. Right next to that, we also have the search on internet button. So this would search the entire internet for what that command does. We'd be able to look at user forums and blogs of anyone who's commented on that particular command, for example. We'll also see the ability to access other things in AutoCAD, such as hatch patterns and blocks. You'll learn more about that later, but all those things are presented here as options when we start typing. So I'll just hit escape for now, so we don't need to do that. Whenever you're entering information, you'll see it show up above the line, so you can see a brief history of what you've done, and then it eventually goes away. This gives you more drawing area. You can see the command window is somewhat transparent. There are some tools that can be adjusted here if we click on the wrench and go into customize. Finally, on the bottom, on the status bar, we have a series of drafting and display tools that can be adjusted. So if we focus in on that area for a minute, we'll see we have some important toggles that we want to make sure that we have on, such as polar tracking, object snap tracking, object snap. We can tell that these are on because they have a blue highlight associated with them. Some tools, like the object snap, have a little down arrow next to it. When we click on that, we will see several options related to how we can snap to various objects when we're in a draw tool or a dimension tool. We also have the ability to go into settings and make multiple changes at once. It should be pointed out that this icon, hardware acceleration, allows us to tell AutoCAD whether or not it should use the graphics card. So we could click on this graphics performance option, and it tells us what graphics card we have, and it also tells us if hardware acceleration is on. If we're experiencing problems with the graphics on the screen, we might want to turn hardware acceleration off. If we have a laptop that doesn't have a dedicated graphics card, it just has a built-in, say for example, Intel graphics card, sometimes it's better to turn that off, but most of the time, if you're not experiencing problems, it's best to have this on so that you have the best experience in AutoCAD as far as performance. I'll cancel that. And then finally, in the very lower right of the screen on the status bar, there's a Customize button, and this allows us to turn on additional features. Some of these are already turned off. Autodesk has determined that they're not used very often and just take up more space, but there's additional ones that can be turned on. There's coordinates, which used to always be on in previous versions of AutoCAD, that show you the X and the Y position of your cursor on the screen. Architectural drafting doesn't use that very often, so you can leave that off. There's dynamic input, which is on by default. The feature is on, just the toggle here to turn it on and off is not on. There's a line weights option. You'll turn this on later in the book, but for now you can leave everything the way it is. And actually there's one more thing that we need to look at. This is called the workspace switcher. So this is fairly important. If your screen does not match what you see in the book, you can always switch your workspace back to drafting and annotation. So that's the default one that you want for this book. This book doesn't cover any 3D modeling, so there's no need to have it on 3D Basics. We can click on that just to briefly see how the ribbon at the top changes. If we click on that again and switch it back to drafting and annotation, we can see how the ribbon comes back, and typically this design feed palette shows up because it's part of the workspace. We're not going to be using this, so you can just click the X here to make that go away. So that's a quick look at the AutoCAD user interface.